So hi, everybody. I'd like to introduce you to Vivian Hermes. She's been doing our mindfulness workshops. She teaches mindfulness at UCLA. She also works at Kaiser Permanente, and she's been doing a great job. So everybody, please welcome Vivian. Go ahead and take it away, Vivian.
Thanks, Jason. Yeah, so I should also offer I also teach it at Kaiser Permanente, and it's for free and open to the public. You don't even have to be a Kaiser member. So I'll share that link with you as well to share more broadly. Thanks, Jason. So welcome everyone to the mindfulness workshop. As Jason said, I'm Vivian Hermes. I'm a certified mindfulness facilitator, and it's just my joy to share this practice that has impacted my life so much. So we always start these sessions in defining mindfulness because there are a number of definitions out there of what mindfulness is. We'll also go over a little bit over what mindfulness isn't. But at UCLA, we define mindfulness as paying attention to present moment experiences with openness, curiosity, and a willingness to be with what is. And as I said, there's a number of different definitions floating out there of what mindfulness is, but you'll always see that it has these four bulleted components in those definitions worded in different ways. So the first piece is that mindfulness always has this intentional awareness that comes to bear in the practice. It's either focused on a particular thing, such as what's really common is breath practice. So if you've ever experienced, follow your breathing, note, or it'll be focused on like physical sensations, notice all your, what your hands are doing, notice what your feet are doing. Or it could be more broad and open in its awareness. So you're really just anchoring in to your physical experience as it's coming in through all your senses. So, but it always has that intentional awareness piece to it. The other piece of any mindfulness practice is that it's experiential. That is, you're turning into your senses and getting really granular about your experience of those senses. So, what are the elements of pain? Does it have borders? Does it have tension? Does it have, some people are more visual, so does it have a color? Does it have a texture? Does it have a temperature? These are all things that we can explore. The other piece is that there's an element of inquisitiveness. And in the UCLA definition, we refer to it as curiosity. And that's because when you come from a place of inquisitiveness and curiosity, all things are possible. It's really open and open to all the possible outcomes and all the intake of all the data points that you might be receiving. And you're not filtering them out as we usually do when we get different information. The other piece is that mindfulness can only be done in the present moment. It's in the here and now. So it's never going to have an element of, daydreaming or worrying to it. It's always, and that's one of the reasons why it's so effective, is that whatever the practice may be, it's bringing you back to exactly what's happening right here and right now. So what mindfulness is not, and these are the more broad misconceptions that I've seen, and it kind of trips up people, excuse me, it trips up people when they're thinking about whether to explore adopting a mindfulness practice. Some people think it's about clearing your mind or about relaxation. So I just wanted to kind of address these things one by one. The first thing is that mindfulness, because it's about a willingness to be with what's happening in the moment, it doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't at all require a clearing of the mind, and it doesn't necessarily lead to a clearing of the mind. So although with practice, steady, persistent practice, you can experience a settling of the mind, and sometimes you'll have little glimpses of cleared mind, and if you're a really advanced meditator, and I'm talking about 10,000 plus hours, um, you can actually experience these kinds of clear mind. Actually, in the beginning, everybody is working with the same sort of bouncy thoughts, worries, to-do lists, everything that's coming up. So it doesn't require a clear mind, nor will it necessarily lead to a clear mind right away. It doesn't it's not about functioning on autopilot. So a lot of times when it's like the antithesis of being on autopilot, because you're offering your full awareness and conscientiousness to whatever you're experiencing in the moment. But what we can do is that we can bring the quality of mindfulness to bear on observing how we move in autopilot. So right now, like my hands are moving on their own, and I'm just bringing my awareness to how they're moving, and gesturing. Additionally, another thing that we do on autopilot is blinking. So you can also kind of bring the awareness of mindfulness to spontaneous acts like that you don't necessarily control, blinking. Um, as far as relaxation goes, you might not necessarily be relaxed. And this also points to that piece about willingness to be with what is. And that's because our mindfulness can be touching into pleasant experience for sure, but it can also be touching into unpleasant experiences. And so those can be a bit agitating or, you know, insightful. They might not necessarily be relaxing, but a lot of people in practicing mindfulness, because you're kind of narrowing your focus, going deep and saturating yourself in a particular experience, it can be a side effect because oftentimes we are, multitasking, stress, creating quite a bit of mental stress in our minds, because in fact, our brain doesn't know how to multitask. What you're doing when you're multitasking is you're flipping switches on and off very, very fast. And so relaxation can be a side effect when you're just kind of coming into a space and doing and focusing on just one thing. So the practice we're going to do today is practices that as a grouping are called feel good practices. And my thought was that we would finish or cap out the series with that, so that you can recognize that feeling good doesn't have to be a product of external circumstances. We can kind of bring it out of ourselves at by our own by instigating it ourselves without necessarily relying on external conditions. So as we kind of before we move into our actual practice, and I wanted to kind of speak to, where do positive emotions come from? Because we all have a natural baseline of where our happiness sits. That's not a terminal condition. It's something that we can cultivate and bring up, but it's just good to recognize that we each have our own natural baseline of where we go, of contentedness, of happiness. So from there, we also can pull positive emotions from memories, from our own experiences as they're happening, and how we frame and evaluate what we're going through in the given moment also speaks to how positive emotions are going to arise in us. Additionally, we can bring forth positive emotions with our thoughts, because the mind actually doesn't know the difference between I'm having a happy thought or I'm experiencing happiness. The same parts of the brain light up. So if we can sort of lean our thinking and our thoughts towards positive and things that feel good, we can actually up that natural baseline and keep it, moving up and kind of staying up. the last way of bringing forth positive emotions is actually through muscle memory. And there's been really amazing research that goes back all the way to the 1960s in how we hold our bodies and the muscle memory that it conjures up. And there have been quite a few TED Talks, for example, about like having like a Superman, Superwoman stance, you know, before you do an interview, because it actually builds confidence. And the other one, the one that we're going to work with, we're going to touch into those three bullets in the practice we're going to do. But for the muscle memory, we're going to work with smiling, because our mind knows that we only smile when we're happy. So if we actually do it in reverse, we smile, we can actually kick up certain feelings within ourselves. And so this is an adapted practice from one of the curriculums that I'm trained in called Unified Mindfulness. And I call it Happy Fest. And this is kind of, now that I've given you kind of a background of where do these positive emotions come from, you can kind of probably link them to those bullet points. But the first way that we're going to practice with it, and you don't have to remember how to do these, I'm going to guide us through each one, but is finding it by noticing any pleasant sensations that are already happening in the body. So in this case, you're looking for physical sensations that are either neutral or really pleasant, that are already happening, that you can touch into, experience more fully, and just experiment with. The other way to do it is by evoking a positive emotion by your thoughts. And you do this by either pulling in a wonderful memory, or kind of going into a place of like thinking of something that you're looking forward to. So just touching into your thinking, whether it be a quote that you lean on, so a favorite quote, just using your capacity for thinking to kick up some positive emotions. We're going to work with, again, as I mentioned, how our smile, what that feels like in our physical sensations. Literally, how does it feel like on our face, and what does it do to our head, our mind, our chest, or however, wherever we might feel it in our bodies, in our hands, maybe even as far down as our feet. And then we're going to also explore triggering it through our other senses. So, you know, we're going to look at sight, sound, touch, smell, taste. And I just invite you, we're not necessarily in nature right now, but a lot of times the sight, sound, touch get really evoked when we're out in nature. I had a really great experience last night. I was on a concert, and the sight and the sounds and the movement of the dancing was really kind of overpowering in triggering my positive emotions. And I was really able to be there and savor it fully. Smell and taste might be a little subtle right now, but we know from the research that scent is so inextricably linked in the brain to our emotions, our memories, and the associations that we make with it. I'm sure there are scents that immediately take you back to certain fond memories. So we know that smell is one of the most significant senses that we have. We can work with that a little bit today, but it may or may not be as available to us as the other ones, as sight, sound, and touch today. Going back to touch, if you think about a great hug you've received and what that does to you when you receive it, but in fact, we can also offer ourselves gentle and loving touch. And we'll practice with that in how to do that. And then finally, taste. We know that taste is very much also linked to emotions. And if we think about things like how we even describe things like it was a bitter pill to swallow, let me think, or like, oh, they were just having, it was just sour grapes, or um, whispering of sweet nothing. We do have associations between our sense of taste and emotions. And what we found is that, in fact, there is, uh, are very often, in the same way that smell is, very much attached to our feeling of well-being. For example, um, victory, like the research shows that when people accomplish something and experience victory, their their receptors for sweetness are heightened, whereas their receptors for sour taste are diminished. And that's a really wild area of research as well. So that's what we'll be exploring today in this practice. Before we jump into the practice, I wanted to speak to things to watch out for. And the first thing is, this doesn't feel like anything is happening. And that's very common. And a lot of times that's due to our sensory clarity. There's two possibilities. So one is that it's, our sensory clarity is not really touching the experience that vividly. And that's okay, because that's where we are. That's just our baseline, and that's where we're reaching ourselves in this moment. That doesn't mean that it's not working, because the more you kind of revisit something, the more you'll notice the subtleties of it. If you do notice even the slightest shift, like, oh, I do sense that, and it might be super subtle. In this practice, we always say that subtle is significant, because if your mind is noticing it, even in the least, it's creating a new pathway. And the more you can orient your mind towards that, the more it'll recognize it the next time it comes across it. Another thing that might happen is that the opposite of good feelings will come up, because we have ideas and notions about what a positive feeling should be like. And all of a sudden, a lot of negative emotions might take up that space to meet that. Maybe self-judgment, maybe judgment about the efficacy of the practice. Anything that comes up that's the opposite of good feelings, let's see if we can just hold that and kind of orient ourselves to having that curious, inquisitive mind of like, really, what does it feel like in my body when it feels good? The practices are just things that we're going to kind of floodlight, we're going to point the spotlight to as we practice with it. If there's other things that you think, oh yeah, no, actually, this is inspiring me to do this other practice that actually feels good, go there and sense into it, but be really present for it, whatever it is. The other piece is like, am I doing this right? There is no, I would say, right way to do this practice, because if I say to you, oh, bring forth a thought or a memory, it could be numerous. It could be a whole story. I have one client that, when he practices feel good, he just brings up an image of an ice cream cone, because he has so many positive associations with just the image of an ice cream cone. So it could be something very simple, and it could be something more narrative in style, but I want you to stay with the practice of inviting that thing up to the point where it actually, you sense it in the body, and then letting it go, and then staying with the body sensations once it's actually like rung the bell of a good feeling, just getting curious about it. Sometimes when we ring the bell, the feeling will actually, we ring the bell and we turn our attention towards it, excuse me, our mind will be like, oh yeah, okay, that's it. And then it'll dissipate, it'll dissolve quickly. What we do is ring the bell again with either another thought, the same thought. We'll do it each time over and over and over. And lastly, the one thing is to remember that this is about holding the intention and building the intention to cultivate positive emotions and good feelings. So staying really gentle and just experimenting with it. um, playing with it. It's just something to explore and see what happens. So with that, I invite you to stretch up and settle in. And that was a lot of information, I realize. So taking a couple of deep breaths in and out. You might need a couple more, and that's good too. But when you really feel you've arrived, you're here, you want to jump into the practice, allowing the breath to go to its natural rhythm. And you can do this practice with your eyes open or closed or anything in between. Just making sure that you maintain a soft gaze in front of you if you are keeping your eyes open. And that's just to minimize the visual distractions. So we'll begin in the happy fest with that F by finding it. Sometimes pleasant feelings are just here, we just kind of gloss over them. So checking in to see if there are any areas of the body that feel relatively pleasant. Might be at the hands or at the feet. I like the tips of my ears because they're usually pretty neutral. You can really just scan the body. Notice an area that feels good, feels pleasant, feels safe. Then just offer your attention there, noticing its qualities. And so when we offer our attention to a particular area, maybe all of a sudden you realize, oh, it's not particularly pleasant, it's just neutral. You can explore the neutrality of it, or maybe it becomes unpleasant. You can always find another area in the body that feels good. Start scanning the surface of the body, the inside of the body. But when you find a place that feels pleasant, just noticing that, staying with it for as long as you can actually feel the pleasantness in the sensations. And then ringing the bell again. So pleasantness can come in many flavors. It could be the experience of temperature. It could be physical sensations like tickling, fluttering, bubbliness, vibration. And now we're going to shift just to practice with the E of the Happy Fest, which is evoke it. And we do this by thinking a positive thought, pulling in a positive memory, a favorite quote, the lyrics to your favorite song. And as soon as we get to a place where actually you've kicked up the good feelings, we let go of the thing that we use and come into the physical sensations of it. And then when it dissolves, either bringing back the same thought, same memory, the same words, or something different. So we'll do this in silence for a bit. So shifting one more time by exploring what it's like to work with our muscle memory and moving to the S of the Happy Fest by smiling. You can do this by either doing a really broad, big smile or just a soft one, alternating between the two. Noticing what happens in the body when you just allow the face to rest from smiling. And then what happens in that moment where you actually bring up the smile. Remembering that this is about touching into the physical sensations that it creates. So when you smile, where do you feel the smile? If something other than positive feelings arises when you smile, that's okay. You can even just move into one of the others, either by noting another pleasant area in the body that's already happening or bringing up a thought to kick up a happy, good feeling. But if you can stay with smiling, noticing what that's like. Now shifting one more time to the T in the fest. And we're going to trigger it through our senses, whether it be through our sight, through pleasant sounds, through touch, smell, or taste. If you want to, excuse me, if you want to offer a feel good touch, you can kind of cradle your face in your hands. You can offer yourself a hug if that feels comfortable. You can just gently stroke the back of your hand or feel what it's like to hold and squeeze your own hand. To work with sound, you can check to see if there are any pleasant sounds within the room that you're in. Noticing maybe it's just the fact that you're hearing might be pleasant. So just relishing the sense itself. And when you do that, as soon as you touch into the good feeling, letting go of the anchor and noticing what that's like in the body. How is my body experiencing this good feeling? Where is it experiencing those feelings? So now that we've cycled through them, we'll review them together. But I invite you to take a few minutes to just explore which one you want to go to next. But the first way that we worked with it was finding it in our body just as it is. And maybe now that we've done this practice, you've become sensitized to areas that are present that maybe you didn't notice when we first started. So checking in there. If you notice a part of the body is very pleasant, very comfortable, feeling restful, see if you can soak into that area in the body. Maybe widen your lens and notice anywhere else in the body and then zooming into that area. We can evoke the good feeling with our thinking, with a thought or a memory. You can go back to working with muscle memory with this smiling. Notice and explore what that's like. Or you can trigger a good feeling through the senses, either through the visual field, by looking around and seeing something that you relish and kind of maintaining a gaze on it, or a sound in and around the room or beyond the room that sounds pleasant. Maybe birds chirping outside. Offering yourself touch, gentle, kind touch, by holding your own hand or giving yourself a hug or cradling your face, or exploring any smells or tastes that are here right now. That are bringing up good feelings. So taking a moment to practice in this way. You can cycle through them yourself or stick to one. Just continuing to be open, curious, experimental. So in a moment, we're going to close this practice period. Just invite you to offer yourself a little bit of gratitude for even exploring this practice, seeing what it's like, regardless of the outcomes. Just like, yeah, I tried something different, something new. And when you're ready, taking a deep breath in and exhaling, becoming aware of the space that you're in. Taking another deep breath in and exhaling all the way out. Bringing your attention back to this space, to this presentation. So there'll be an opportunity to talk about your experience, how that was at the end. And I'd love to hear what that was like for you, and also to answer any questions you may have. I wanted to also share about the effects of when we amplify our positive emotions. And these are straight from different studies, but they've been found to balance out our natural negative bias. The natural negative bias of the mind is not something to, criticize or be weary of. It's actually what has kept us alive for so long. The mind is such that it's constantly searching for dangers, things to fix, things to mitigate, so as to keep us alive. And that's its one major purpose and function, is to make sure that this organism, this body, stays alive. So it does have a natural negative bias, but in amplifying our experience of positive emotions, we can actually create a little more balance in that regard. Um, the other piece is that when we actually are experiencing something wonderful, something positive, we can really savor it, soak into it, expand and enhance the experience of it. A lot of times when we have positive experiences, we are already anticipating its end. So we start building all of this anxiety around it, some constriction around it in ourselves, even though it's such a wonderful experience. So practicing in this way allows you to really be with it as it's happening, so you can really take it in. Um, it also helps us actually notice, savor, and soak into good feelings that are just here without us having to do anything. Sometimes we wake up on the right side of the bed and everything is, wonderful, and there's happiness, and, it really affects our view of our experience. And when that happens, we know that that's not all the time, but when that does happen, we can actually notice it more quickly and savor and soak into it. It's also been found to support a sense of optimism and resilience, that is, having that inner flexibility and the strength at the same time to meet life's challenges. So it's really important to kind of, in the same way we build our mindfulness muscles, we also build that anchoring into positive sensations in our bodies, in our thinking, in our muscle memory, so that our mind will orient itself towards it. And this is important because one of the really big and lofty goals of practicing mindfulness is experiencing happiness independent of the conditions that you're in. We do this by building our concentration, and concentration being that stamina to be with what's happening, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant, really building that ability to be with the thing that's in front of us. Sensory clarity, it helps us deepen that intimate understanding of not only the obvious and gross sensations that are happening in our body, but also those that are more subtle and usually are the earlier signals before the really obvious big physical sensations come up. So as we get granular with our sensory experience and get into the smaller ones, we actually we are able to notice them sooner, as like an emotion comes up, or our reaction to an experience that's happening externally. We catch ourselves sooner. And finally, it helps also, as we build these skill set, it helps us create a deep peace of mind, in allowing us to build this really big container in which all of this human experience that we're having can exist without us pushing and pulling into, like, we usually like want to draw in all the pleasant, and we want to push out all the unpleasant things that are going on, and that creates a bit of imbalance in the way we just start getting pulled in all directions. And so in building this skill set, in allowing us to be with what is, also creates a sense of well-being and a peace of mind that we can meet whatever challenge is in front of us. And in doing all of that, you can actually be completely with whatever physical and emotional sensations that are here. You get to experience them, excuse me, in their wholeness. And it's not based on prior ideas and notions that you might have of what happiness is, for example, or what's pleasurable, but actually kind of meeting it. Oh, actually, in this subtle way, neutral sensations are pleasant. And so, in building, with more and more practice, you kind of build that capacity. So I wanted to offer, we usually do 2 practices in these sessions, and I wanted to offer a loving kindness practice. And the way we're going to do this is I'm going to provide you with phrases to use. You can use the phrases that I'm offering, and that's fine, but it's actually better if my phrases don't resonate, to think of phrases that actually come in your own voice so that there isn't any sort of friction. So what I'm offering is just suggestions, and there'll be moments of silence for you to kind of fill it in the way that you see fit. We're going to start by offering it to someone else, because a lot of times offering ourselves kindness, we kind of put ourselves last in line, even though we're probably the most deserving of our compassion and most needing of our own compassion. Um, we're going to start by offering it to someone else, and we're going to explore what it feels like when they offer it to us. And then we're going to see what it feels like to offer it to ourselves. But in that same way, that same explorative and experimental, kind of open and curious mind, I invite you to practice this practice with me. So I invite you again to stretch up and settle in. And in doing this practice, we're going to start by bringing someone to mind who we find to be really easy to be around. It could be a loved one, it could be a non-human, like a pet. Just bring them into your mind's eye as vividly as you can. Feel their presence. Maybe smile to them and see if they smile back, to kind of test how vivid you're seeing them. Doing your best in whatever way feels natural for you. And we're going to offer them some well wishes. And as we do this, just noticing what it feels like to be sending these well wishes to them. And the first one is, you say to them, may you be safe and protected from inner and outer harm. May you be safe and protected from inner and outer harm. May you be healthy and strong. May you be healthy and strong. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be happy. So these are just suggestions. Invite you to feel the words, the well wishes coming out of you and touching this beautiful being. It can flow as words or light or energy or whatever feels comfortable for you. Noticing what it's like. Noticing what it's like in the body, what it's like to be offering these well wishes. Recognizing that these are universal well wishes. And that this being that loves you and appreciates you also wants these same things for you. So you can imagine that they too are wishing these same things for you. So imagine them saying to you now, may you be safe and protected from inner and outer harm. And what's it like to be on the receiving end? May you be safe and protected from inner and outer harm. May you be healthy and strong. May you be healthy and strong. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be happy. May you be happy. And now we're going to experiment one more time by imagining offering it to ourselves. And oftentimes we have a hard time allowing things to come in. So you can do this by putting a hand over your heart to give yourself support, or cradling your face, or holding your own hand as you do this, whatever gives you the most support. And you say to yourself, may I be safe and protected from inner and outer harm. May I be safe and protected from inner and outer harm. May I be healthy and strong. May I be healthy and strong. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be happy. So feel the words and well wishes coming in. If anything other than a sense of kindness and gentleness is coming up, you can say to yourself, this too, may I hold this with kindness. This too, may I hold this with kindness. Noticing what that feels like. And when you're ready, taking a deep breath in and exhaling. You can even sigh on the exhale if that helps. Taking another deep breath in, opening your eyes if they were closed, and becoming aware of the space that you're in. So I know we are at time, but I'm happy to stay a bit and take your reports or questions about either of these practices, your takeaways. I want to thank you for being here. As you think about that, one of the things that I wanted to share with you this time around is this Atlas of Emotions. It's a beautiful website. It's atlasofemotions.org, and it was developed by doctors Paul and Eve Ekman. And it really helps get into that granular definition of what are our emotions, what and how do they manifest. And this one kind of goes over the full range of our emotions, not just the positive emotions. So yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Vivian, I'm going to go ahead and pause it now, okay?